Princess Kyra stood before the mirror in her chambers and tried to remember how to breathe. Her wings, usually bright with shades of blue and violet, had faded to a dull gray. They always changed color with her emotions, and right now she felt nothing but cold fear. Today she would leave her home forever. Today she would marry a human. The door opened behind her. Her mother, the Empress of the Valanthy Empire, entered the room. She was tall and elegant, with wings that shimmered like liquid gold. But today, even she looked tired. "It is time," her mother said. Kira nodded. She had volunteered for this. 3 years of war had killed millions. Her 2 older brothers had died in human counterattacks. Her childhood home had been destroyed by bombs dropped from orbit. The Valanthy Empire was losing, and everyone knew it. The humans were too strong, too stubborn, too willing to die. So when the Empress proposed an ancient ritual, a political marriage to end the bloodshed, Kira had stepped forward. She was the 4th daughter. She was not important. If her sacrifice could save her people, then she would make it gladly. But standing here now, about to board a ship that would take her to the enemy, she was terrified. "What are they like?" Kyra asked her mother. "The humans?" The Empress was quiet for a long moment. "They are Deathworlders," she finally said. "They evolved on a planet that tries to kill them every day. Their sun burns with radiation. Their world is filled with predators and poison and disease. They should not exist. And yet they do. Are they monsters?" "I do not know," her mother admitted. "Our soldiers say they fight without mercy. They say humans feel no pain, no fear. They say humans laugh while they kill." She paused. "But our soldiers also say humans spare the wounded sometimes. They say humans bury their dead with strange rituals. I do not understand them, daughter. No one does." Kyra felt her wings tremble. "And I must marry one of them." Her mother took her hands. Her grip was warm and firm. "You are the bravest of my children," she said. "Braver than your brothers who died in battle. You walk into the unknown to save us all. I will never forget this." They embraced. Kyra breathed in her mother's familiar scent and tried to memorize it. She did not know if she would ever smell it again. The journey to the neutral station took 4 days. Kyra spent most of it alone in her small cabin, reading everything she could find about humans. The information was mostly propaganda, written to make her people hate the enemy. Humans were described as violent primitives, with no culture and no art. They were described as beasts, who lived only to fight and conquer. But there were other reports too. Older ones, reports from before the war, when Valanthy traders had visited human space. These reports painted a different picture. They spoke of humans who made beautiful music, humans who created paintings and sculptures, humans who loved their families with fierce devotion. Kyra did not know which version to believe. The neutral station was a massive structure floating in empty space, far from any star. It belonged to the Collective, a group of elder species who served as peacekeepers. They had arranged this marriage. They would witness the ceremony. Kyra's shuttle docked at the station, and she walked down the ramp on shaking legs. Her attendants followed behind her, but she barely noticed them. Her compound eyes scanned the docking bay, searching for the human. She found him standing near the far wall. He was shorter than she expected. Humans were supposed to be large and muscular, built for violence. But this human was lean and average in height. He had brown hair cut short and a face that was neither handsome nor ugly by Valanthy standards. His eyes were a light blue color, and they watched her with an expression she could not read. He wore a formal military uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. His rank insignia identified him as a commander in the Terran Navy. His name, according to the files she had read, was Daniel Grant. As Kyra approached, the human did something unexpected. He bowed. It was not a Valanthy bow. The angle was wrong, and his wings, of course, did not spread, because humans did not have wings. But it was clearly meant as a gesture of respect. "Princess Kyra," he said. His voice was softer than she expected. "I am honored to meet you." Kira did not know what to say. She had prepared herself for aggression, for dominance, for a conqueror claiming his prize. She had not prepared for politeness. "Commander Grant," she managed. He straightened from his bow and held out his hands. In them was a small pot, containing a plant with green leaves and tiny white flowers. "I brought you a gift," he said. "I read that your people appreciate living things. This is called jasmine. It grows on Earth. It smells nice." Kyra stared at the plant. Her wings flushed with confusion, shifting from gray to a pale yellow. A human warrior had brought her flowers. "Thank you," she said, taking the pot. The soil was warm against her fingers. The ceremony itself was brief and cold. A representative from the collective read the ancient words. Kira and Daniel spoke their vows. Neither of them smiled. This was politics, not romance. Everyone knew it. When the representative declared them married, Daniel took Kyra's hand. His skin was warm, almost hot compared to hers. She flinched at the contact, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or understanding. He let go quickly. They boarded the human ship together. It was called the Horizon, and it was smaller than Kira expected. Her quarters were comfortable, with a soft bed and a window that looked out at the stars. Daniel showed her how everything worked, then left her alone. She had expected him to stay. She had expected him to claim his rights as her husband. Every culture she knew of had such traditions. The wedding night was supposed to be the night when the marriage was sealed, but Daniel simply said goodnight and walked away. Kyra sat on her bed, holding the jasmine plant, and tried to understand what was happening. That night, she could not sleep. The ship was too quiet, too strange. She missed the sounds of her home, the singing of her sisters, the wind through the crystal towers. Then she heard something through the wall. Music. It was soft and slow, made by an instrument she did not recognize. The notes rose and fell like waves on water. It was the most beautiful and sad thing she had ever heard. She pressed her ear against the wall and listened. The human, her husband, was playing music in the middle of the night. Kyra did not understand humans. She did not understand this man who brought her flowers and played sad songs alone in his room. She did not understand why he had not tried to touch her or control her. But for the first time since she had volunteered for this marriage, she did not feel afraid. She felt curious. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Kyra learned that her husband was a quiet man. He did not talk much, but when he did, his words were kind. He ate his meals with her in the small dining area of the ship. He answered her questions about human customs without laughing at her ignorance. He never touched her without permission. She still did not understand him. On the final day of the journey, Daniel took her to the observation deck. Earth hung in the blackness of space like a blue and green jewel. White clouds swirled across its surface. Kyra pressed her hands against the window and stared. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It is home," Daniel said. There was something in his voice she had not heard before. Love, perhaps. Or pride. They landed at a place called Montana, in a region called North America. Kira stepped off the shuttle and took her first breath of Earth air. It was thick. So thick, she almost choked. Her lungs, designed for the thin atmosphere of her homeworld, struggled to process the dense mixture of gases. The gravity was wrong too. She felt heavy, like invisible hands were pressing down on her shoulders. And the sun. The sun was so bright it hurt her eyes even through her protective membranes. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked, his hand hovering near her elbow but not touching. "The gravity," she gasped. "The air. How do you survive this?" Daniel smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "We are used to it," he said. "Your body will adjust in a few days. Until then, we will take things slow." A vehicle waited for them at the landing pad. It drove them through rolling green hills and past fields of tall yellow plants that Daniel called wheat. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks white with something called snow. The sky was a deep blue, deeper than any sky Kyra had ever seen. She had expected a hellscape. Instead, she found a world of terrible beauty. The vehicle stopped at a large wooden house surrounded by trees. 3 people stood on the porch, waiting for them. Kyra recognized none of them from her files. Daniel helped her out of the vehicle. "These are my parents," he said. "And my sister. They wanted to meet you." The older woman moved first. She had gray hair and a round face and eyes that crinkled at the corners. Before Kyra could react, the woman wrapped her arms around her and squeezed. Kyra froze. Her wings snapped tight against her back. No Valanthe would ever touch a stranger so casually. Physical contact was reserved for family, for lovers, for the closest of friends. To embrace someone you had just met was unthinkable. But the woman did not seem to care. She held Kyra tight and said, "Welcome to the family, dear. I am Martha." When Martha finally let go, Kyra was trembling. Daniel's father stepped forward next. He was tall and weathered, with deep lines on his face and only one arm. The left sleeve of his shirt was pinned up at the elbow. "Henry Grant," he said, offering his remaining hand. "Good to meet you." Kyra shook his hand carefully. "What happened to your arm?" she asked, before she could stop herself. Henry laughed. "Farm accident, 20 years ago. Machine caught it wrong." He shrugged like it was nothing. "Could have gotten a synthetic replacement, but I decided to keep the reminder. Makes me more careful." Kyra stared at him. He had lost a limb, and he laughed about it. He had refused to replace it because he wanted to remember the pain. What kind of species were these humans? The younger woman bounded forward next. She had Daniel's blue eyes and a wide smile. "I am Sophie," she said. "Daniel's little sister. I have so many questions about your species. Is it true your bones are hollow? Can you actually fly? Or are your wings just for display? What do you eat? Do you like dogs?" "We have 3 dogs. Sophie," Daniel said firmly. "Give her some space." Sophie backed off, but her smile did not fade. "Sorry. I am just excited. I work with animals, and I have never met an alien before." "You are my first alien." Kyra did not know what to say. She had expected hostility, or at least cold politeness. She had not expected enthusiasm. The first week was overwhelming. Kyra learned that humans ate at least 3 times a day. Sometimes more. They slept for 8 hours at a stretch. Unconscious and vulnerable. They drank a black, bitter liquid called coffee that made them more alert. They touched each other constantly, casually, without meaning anything by it. She also learned that Earth was trying to kill her. One evening, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Kyra heard the thunder first, a sound like explosions in the sky. Then she saw the lightning. White fire stabbing down from the clouds. Rain fell so hard it sounded like rocks hitting the roof. She ran to the living room, her wings spread in alarm. "We must seek shelter," she gasped. "The storm will destroy the house." The Grant family looked up from their seats. Martha was knitting something. Henry was reading a book. Sophie was playing with one of the dogs. None of them seemed concerned. "It is just a thunderstorm," Daniel said. "Happens all the time. The house is fine, but the lightning, the noise. The house has lightning rods. We are safe." Kyra watched in disbelief as the humans continued their evening activities. Outside, the world was being torn apart by wind and water and fire. Inside, Martha asked if anyone wanted more tea. Later that week, Daniel took her for a walk in the forest behind the house. Kyra was nervous. The trees were tall and thick, and she could hear creatures moving in the shadows. Then something large stepped onto the path ahead of them. It was a bear. Kyra had read about these animals. They were predators, capable of killing a human with a single blow. This one was huge, with dark brown fur and small eyes that fixed on them with hunger. Kyra grabbed Daniel's arm. "Run," she whispered. "We must run." But Daniel did not run. He stood tall, raised his arms above his head, and shouted at the bear. His voice was loud and commanding, nothing like his usual quiet tone. The bear stopped. It stared at Daniel for a long moment. Then it turned and walked away into the trees. Kyra could not believe what she had just seen. "You yelled at a predator," she said. "You yelled at it, and it left." "Bears are smart," Daniel explained. "They do not want to fight if they do not have to. You just have to show them you are not easy prey." "But it could have killed you," Daniel shrugged. "It could have, but it did not." That night, Kyra sat on the porch with Sophie. The younger woman was talking about her work as an animal doctor. She had shown Kyra pictures of herself handling snakes with poison strong enough to kill 10 humans. She had told stories about treating wolves and mountain lions. "Are you not afraid?" Kyra asked. Sophie thought about it. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But fear does not help. The animals can sense it. So I learned to control my fear. I respect the danger, but I do not let it stop me." Kyra looked up at the stars. Her homeworld was somewhere out there, millions of miles away. She thought about her mother's words. They should not exist. And yet they do. She was beginning to understand why. These humans lived on a world that tried to kill them every single day. The storms, the predators, the diseases, the crushing gravity, the burning sun. Any other species would have died out long ago, but humans did not die. They adapted, they survived, they thrived, and they did it with smiles on their faces. Later that night, Kyra found Daniel in the kitchen. He was making tea, moving quietly so he would not wake his parents. "Daniel," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." She looked at him, this strange, quiet human who had become her husband. "How are your people not extinct?" Daniel laughed softly. He poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to her. "We are too stubborn to die," he said. "We always have been." Kyra wrapped her fingers around the warm cup and thought about his words. Too stubborn to die. It was such a simple answer. And yet, somehow, it explained everything. 6 months passed. Kyra learned to breathe earth, air, without struggling. She learned to walk in earth gravity without feeling like she was carrying stones on her back. She learned the names of the dogs and the songs Martha hummed while cooking and the way Henry liked his coffee in the morning. She was becoming comfortable. She was almost becoming happy. But she and Daniel were still strangers in many ways. They lived in the same house, ate at the same table, walked through the same forests. Yet there was a wall between them, invisible but solid. They were partners in a political arrangement, not husband and wife in any real sense. Kyra slept in her own room. Daniel never asked for more. She told herself she was grateful for his distance. She told herself she did not want more. She was not sure if she was lying. Everything changed the day Admiral Cole came to visit. Victor Cole was an old friend of Henry Grant. He was also a veteran of the war, a high-ranking officer who had commanded ships in battle against the Valanthi. He arrived on a sunny afternoon, his shuttle landing in the field behind the house. Kyra watched from the window as the family gathered to greet him. Cole was a large man, with silver hair and a face like carved stone. His eyes were cold and sharp. When he looked at the house and saw Kyra watching, his expression did not change, but she felt the hostility radiating from him like heat from a fire. The dinner that night was tense. Cole talked about old times with Henry, about battles they had fought, and friends they had lost. He was polite to Martha and Sophie. He ignored Kyra completely. She tried not to let it bother her. She knew that not all humans would accept her. She knew that the war had left deep wounds on both sides, but then she heard the conversation. She had gone to the kitchen to help Martha with the dishes. Cole and Daniel were in the living room. Their voices low, but not low enough. "How do you stand it?" Cole was asking. "Living with one of them. Sleeping under the same roof." "She is my wife," Daniel said. "She is the enemy. Her people killed thousands of our soldiers. They destroyed colonies. They murdered civilians. The war is over. The war is never over. Not really. Not for those of us who were there." There was a long silence. Kyra held her breath. "I was there too," Daniel finally said. His voice was quiet but hard. "I lost friends. I watched good people die. I carry those memories every day." But Kyra did not kill them. She volunteered to end the killing. She left her home and her family to bring peace. She is the bravest person I have ever met. Daniel, she is family now. My family. And I will not hear her insulted in my own home. Kyra pressed her hand against her chest. Her wings flushed with colors she could not control. No one had ever defended her like that. Not since her brothers had died. Cole left the next morning. He did not say goodbye to Kyra. She did not care. That evening, Daniel found her sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He sat down beside her, closer than usual. I am sorry about Victor, he said. He is a good man, but the war broke something in him. I understand pain, Kyra said. My brothers died fighting your people. My home was destroyed. I have reasons to hate, but you do not hate. No, she looked at him. Do you? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. I used to, he admitted. During the war, I hated your people. It was easy to hate. It made the killing feel justified. He paused. But then, something happened. What? The Battle of Varan the Four. My ship was boarded. Valanthi soldiers everywhere, fighting in the corridors. I killed. I survived. But at the end, when the fighting was over, I found one of your soldiers, a female. She was wounded badly, dying. Kira felt her hearts beat faster. What did you do? I sat with her. I gave her water. I held her hand while she died. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. She was terrified. She kept calling for her mother, and I realized that she was not a monster. She was just a person, far from home, who did not want to die alone. Tears formed in Kira's eyes. Valanthi did not cry like humans, but the emotion was the same. You showed her kindness. I showed her what she deserved. What everyone deserves. Daniel turned to face her. That is when I stopped hating. I realized that we are all the same. Underneath, human, Valanthi. It does not matter. We all love. We all want to live. Kira reached out and took his hand. She had never done that before, not willingly. His skin was warm against hers. My brothers were good people, she said. They were funny and kind and they loved to sing. The war took them from me. I blamed your people for years. She squeezed his hand. She squeezed his hand, but I am learning that blame does not bring them back. It only makes the wound deeper. They sat together in silence as the stars came out. For the first time since her arrival on Earth, Kyra did not feel alone. Over the next few weeks, things changed between them. They talked more. They laughed more. Daniel showed her how to play the instrument she had heard through the wall that first night. It was called a guitar, and the sounds it made were beautiful. She told him about her homeworld. She described the crystal towers that sang when the wind blew. She told him about her sisters and their games. She taught him words in her language, and he taught her songs in his. The wall between them was crumbling. One night, Kira could not sleep. She went to the kitchen for water and found Daniel already there. He was staring out the window at the darkness. Bad dreams? She asked. Memories, he said. They never really go away. For memory. She stood beside him. My people believe that grief shared is grief halved. Daniel looked at her. That is a good belief. Is it true for humans? He nodded slowly. We need each other. To heal. To survive. To make sense of the terrible things that happen. We are not meant to carry our burdens alone. Kyra understood then. She understood why humans formed families so easily. Why they touched so freely. Why they defended each other so fiercely. They needed connection. Like they needed air. Without it, they would break. She took Daniel's hand again. This time, she did not let go. I am glad I married you, she said quietly. He squeezed her hand. I am glad too. They stood together in the dark kitchen, two people from opposite ends of a war, holding on to each other. Outside, A storm was building on the horizon. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but Kyra was not afraid of storms anymore. She was beginning to feel like she belonged. 1 year after the wedding, Kyra considered Earth her home. She woke each morning to the smell of Martha's cooking. She helped Henry in the fields. She played with Sophie's dogs. She fell asleep each night with Daniel beside her, his warmth a comfort against the cool mountain air. She had never expected to find happiness. She had volunteered for this marriage expecting sacrifice, expecting suffering. Instead, she had found a family, but peace is fragile. Kyra would learn that lesson on a day she would never forget. The diplomatic conference was supposed to be routine. Human and Valanthi officials gathering on a neutral station to discuss trade agreements. Daniel had been asked to attend as a symbol of the alliance, and Kyra was going with him. It was their first trip off Earth since the wedding. The transport ship was called the Morning Star. It was a civilian vessel. Not a warship, but it had a small security team on board. Kyra recognized some of the crew members from previous visits to the Grant homestead. They smiled at her and called her by name. The journey was uneventful. Kyra and Daniel spent most of it reading and talking. She showed him pictures from her homeworld that her mother had sent. He told her stories about his childhood in Montana. They were happy. Then the alarms began to scream. Daniel pulled Kyra to her feet. His face had changed, becoming hard and focused. The quiet man she knew had disappeared. In his place was the soldier. "Stay close to me," he said. "What is happening?" "We are being attacked." The ship shuddered as something hit the hull. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. The crew scrambled to their stations, shouting orders that Kyra could barely understand. A voice came over the speakers. It spoke in the Valanthi language, and Kira's blood went cold when she heard the words, "Traitor princess, you have sold your people to the enemy. Today, you will pay the price." Kyra recognized the speaker. His name was Zeth Kai, a military commander who had refused to accept the peace treaty. He believed the war should have continued until humanity was destroyed. He considered Kyra's marriage an act of betrayal. "They are here for me," Kira whispered. Daniel's grip on her arm tightened. "Then they will have to go through me." The attack came fast. Valanthi soldiers breached the hull and poured into the corridors. They were armed with pulse rifles and wore heavy armor. Their leader, Zeth Kai, was among them. He was tall and scarred, with wings that had been damaged in battle and never healed properly. The human crew fought back. Kyra had seen humans before. She had lived with them for a year. But she had never seen them fight. They were terrifying. The security team moved like one creature. They communicated without words, covering each other, advancing and retreating in perfect coordination. When one fell, the others did not stop. They kept fighting. Even the wounded kept fighting. A human woman took a shot to the leg. She fell, but she propped herself against the wall and kept firing her weapon. A human man was slashed across the chest by a Valanthi blade. He grabbed his attacker and threw him into the wall with his bare hands. They would not stop. They would not give up. They fought like the predators of their death world, like creatures that had survived 1 billion years of evolution by refusing to die. Daniel pulled Kyra into a side corridor, trying to find a safe place. But Zeth Kai appeared in front of them, blocking their path. "Commander Grant," Zeth Kai said. His voice was cold. "Step aside. I have no quarrel with you. I only want the traitor." "She is my wife," Daniel said. "Then you will die with her." Zeth Kai lunged forward, his blade aimed at Kyra. But Daniel moved faster. He stepped between them, raising his arm to block the strike. The blade cut deep into his shoulder, slicing through muscle and bone. Daniel did not scream. He grabbed Zeth Kai by the throat and drove his knee into the Valanthi's stomach. They crashed to the ground together, fighting for control of the blade. Kyra could not move. She watched her husband bleed, watched him struggle against an enemy warrior, and felt her hearts breaking. He was going to die. He was going to die for her. But Daniel did not die. He twisted the blade free from Zeth Kai's grip and drove it into the Valanthi's leg. Zeth Kai howled in pain. Daniel hit him in the face, once, Twice, 3 times, until the enemy commander stopped moving. Then he stood up. Blood soaked his uniform. His face was pale, but he was alive. "Daniel," Kyra gasped. "I am okay," he said, though he clearly was not. They ran through the corridors, stepping over bodies from both sides. The fighting was ending. Reinforcements had arrived, a Terran Navy ship called the Resolute that had responded to the distress signal. Its Marines were sweeping through the transport, eliminating the remaining attackers with cold efficiency. The commander of the Resolute, a man named Eric Vance, found them in the medical bay. Daniel was sitting on a table while a medic worked on his shoulder. Kira was beside him, refusing to let go of his hand. "Commander Grant," Vance said. "You did good work today." "I did what I had to do," Daniel replied. Vance looked at Kyra. "The attackers are dead or captured. Zethkai will face trial for his crimes." He paused. "You are safe now." Safe. The word felt strange to Kyra. She had almost died today. Her husband had almost died. And for what? Because she had chosen peace instead of war. But then she looked at Daniel. At his pale face and bloody shoulder. At his eyes, which still watched her with concern despite his own pain. "Why did you do it?" she asked him after Vance had left. "Why did you step in front of that blade? You could have died." Daniel seemed confused by the question. "You are my wife. It was a political arrangement. You had no obligation to protect me." "Yes, I did." "Why?" He took her hand. His grip was weak from blood loss, but his voice was strong. "Because you are family. You are mine. And humans protect what is theirs." Kyra thought about the battle she had just witnessed. The humans who kept fighting despite their wounds. The man who threw an enemy across the room with his bare hands. The woman who propped herself against a wall and kept shooting until she passed out from blood loss. She thought about Daniel. Stepping in front of a blade, meant for her without hesitation, without fear. And she finally understood. This was why no empire challenged humanity. Not their weapons, not their ships, not their technology. It was this. Their love was a fire that could not be put out. Their loyalty was a force that could not be broken. When a human decided you were theirs, they would die before they let anyone hurt you. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against Daniel's. It was a Valanthi gesture of deep affection. Something she had never done with him before. "I want to stay with you," she whispered. "Not because of the treaty. Not because of politics. Because I choose you." Daniel smiled, despite the pain. "I choose you too." Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. But Kyra felt warmer than she ever had before. She was not just a treaty bride anymore. She was his. And he was hers. And that was worth fighting for. 3 years had passed since the wedding. 3 years since a terrified princess had walked down a ramp on a neutral station, expecting to meet a monster. 3 years since a quiet human had offered her a flower and changed her life. Kyra stood on the porch of the Grant homestead, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Her hand rested on her stomach, where new life was growing. A life that would be half human, half Valanthi. The first of its kind. She had sent word to her mother months ago. The Empress had been silent for a long time. Kyra had begun to think she would never respond. Then the message came. The Empress was coming to Earth. The galaxy had watched in shock. No Valanthi monarch had ever visited the human homeworld. The journey was considered too dangerous. The destination too hostile. But the Empress had insisted. She wanted to see her daughter. She needed to understand. The shuttle landed in the same field where Kyra had arrived 3 years ago. The Grant family stood together, waiting. Daniel held Kyra's hand. Martha was fidgeting with her dress. Henry stood straight and calm as always. Sophie was bouncing on her heels with excitement. The shuttle door opened. The Empress descended. She was as beautiful as Kyra remembered. Tall and elegant, with wings that shimmered like gold in the fading sunlight. But she looked tired. The years of war and the burden of leadership had left their marks. Her compound eyes swept across the scene, taking in the wooden house, the green fields, the mountains in the distance. Then they settled on Kyra. For a moment, neither of them moved. The mother and the daughter, separated by light years and politics and time. Then Kira stepped forward. Mother. The Empress crossed the remaining distance and embraced her. They held each other for a long time, surrounded by silence. You look well, the Empress finally said, pulling back to study her daughter's face. You look happy. I am happy. The Empress turned to look at Daniel. Her expression was unreadable. Commander Grant. You are the human who married my daughter. Daniel bowed in the human way. I am honored to meet you, Empress. I was told you saved her life during the attack. I did what any husband would do. No. The Empress shook her head. What you did was extraordinary. Our intelligence reports say you took a blade meant for her. That you fought despite your wounds. That you refused to stop until she was safe. Daniel said nothing. He did not see his actions as extraordinary. He had protected his wife. That was all. Martha stepped forward before the silence could become awkward. You must be tired from your journey, she said to the Empress. Please. Come inside. I have made tea. The Empress blinked. Kyra could see her trying to process this strange human custom, this casual offer of hospitality from a commoner to a monarch. Then Martha did something that made Kyra's wings flush with alarm. She hugged the Empress. The ruler of 40 star systems stood frozen as a human farmer wrapped arms around her. Martha did not seem to notice the tension. She simply patted the Empress on the back and said, Welcome to the family, dear. When Martha released her, the Empress looked at Kyra with wide eyes. Does she do that to everyone? Yes, Kira said, smiling. You get used to it. The next 3 days were the strangest of the Empress's life. Kira showed her everything, just as Daniel had once shown her. They walked through the forests, and the Empress saw the bears and the wolves that shared this world with humans. They stood on the porch during a thunderstorm, and she watched in disbelief as the family played cards while lightning struck the hills. She visited Sophie's animal clinic and saw the young woman handle venomous creatures without fear. She watched Henry work the fields with one arm, refusing help, refusing to slow down. She tasted Martha's cooking and listened to her stories about raising 3 children on a farm. She saw the way Daniel looked at Kyra, with quiet devotion and endless patience. On the 3rd night, the Empress found Kyra alone in the garden. Daniel's jasmine plant had grown over the years, spreading along a wooden frame until it covered one whole wall. Its white flowers filled the air with sweetness. This plant, the Empress said. The human gave it to you at your wedding. Yes, and you have kept it alive all this time. It was his first gift to me. It reminded me that he was not what I expected. Kyra touched one of the flowers gently. It reminded me that I did not have to be afraid. The Empress was quiet for a long moment. Are you truly happy here, daughter? With these people? On this death world? Kyra turned to face her mother. I am happier than I ever thought possible. And the child? Kyra placed her hand on her stomach again. Our child will be born in 3 months. The doctors say she is healthy. She will have wings like mine and eyes like his. She smiled. She will be something new. Something the galaxy has never seen. Tears formed in the Empress's eyes. Valanthe rarely cried, but the emotion overwhelmed her. I sent you away to save our people, she whispered. I never expected you to find love. Neither did I. They embraced again, mother and daughter, standing among the jasmine flowers as the stars came out. The Empress returned to her empire the next day. But before she left, she asked to speak with the entire family. They gathered in the living room, humans and Valanthe together, and waited. I came here expecting to find my daughter surviving, the Empress said. I expected her to be tolerating her situation, enduring her fate with dignity. Instead, I found her thriving. I found her loved. She looked at each of them in turn. Martha with her warm smile, Henry with his quiet strength, Sophie with her boundless energy, Daniel with his steady gaze. You have shown me something I did not expect, the Empress continued. You have shown me the truth about humanity. What truth is that? Martha asked. That you are not the monsters our propaganda described. You are not mindless warriors or savage beasts. The Empress paused. You are people who turn strangers into family. People who love with a ferocity that frightens the stars. People who will burn down galaxies to protect what is theirs. She turned to Daniel. Take care of my daughter, Commander Grant. I will, he said simply, and the Empress believed him. Months later, Kyra gave birth to a daughter. She had her father's blue eyes and her mother's iridescent wings. She was small and perfect and loud, crying with a voice that echoed through the house. Daniel held his daughter for the first time, tears streaming down his face. She is beautiful, he whispered. She is ours, Kyra said. The jasmine plant bloomed outside the window, filling the room with its sweet scent. The mountains stood tall in the distance, unchanged since long before humans walked this world. The sun set over Montana, painting the sky in colors no artist could capture. Kira sat in bed, watching her husband hold their daughter. She thought about the princess who had arrived on this world 3 years ago, terrified and alone. She thought about everything she had learned since then. Humans were not monsters. They were not beasts or savages or mindless killers. They were something far more remarkable. They were beings who survived the unsurvivable, who loved with their whole hearts, who fought not for conquest, but for the people they cherished. And now she was one of them. Not by blood, but by choice, by love, by the bonds that the Grant family had wrapped around her from the very first day. She was no longer just a treaty bride. She was a Grant. She was human in all the ways that mattered. And now she understood why no empire dared challenge them. It was not their weapons. It was not their ships. It was not their technology, or their numbers, or their tactics. It was this. Once a human decided you were theirs, they would tear apart the stars themselves to keep you safe. And heaven help anyone who tried to stand in their way.